Yeah, just a quick review of the book, Three Steps to Heal Shoulder Impingement Syndrome, the self-treatment guide to treat shoulder pain. Basically, the book's divided up into three, I think like three major sections. So I'll just kind of go over each briefly just to let you know what's in the book. The first one's like shoulder impingement syndrome, goes over causes. The second one is really the meat and potatoes of the whole book, shoulder shoulder impingement treatment. And here they have this, they cover the three steps. Basically, the first step kind of shows you how to reduce pain and inflammation. The second one shows you techniques to repair tissue and build your strength. And the third step is more aimed at prevention. And they give you exercises to make sure it doesn't come back. So those are really the three steps, which I think are pretty complete. And then the third section, shoulder impingement prevention. So yeah, I think it's a good book. If you have a shoulder issue, impingement is basically impingement is something's getting pinched. So let's say you have your shoulder, which is a ball and socket joint. Well, the ball, above the ball is part of your shoulder blade called your acromion. So there's a little space in between your acromion process and the ball of your shoulder. And when you raise your arm, that space becomes a little smaller. And normally everything's just fine. You raise your arm, it gets a little smaller, but there's still room for everything that's in that section. You know, things like a bursa, tendons, that kind of stuff. But impingement syndrome, things get inflamed or for various reasons you lose shoulder stability and you raise your arm up, that becomes pinched because you just don't have stability or, like I say, inflammation, that kind of thing. Another really quick way, I think, to treat shoulder impingement syndrome, which is critical, is with strengthening your rotator cuff. And I think if you do just that alone, you're going to get, here's the thing, your shoulder is a shallow ball and socket joint. So it depends, basically most of its stability is depending on the rotator cuff, you know, four muscles that hold the ball tightly in the socket. If they get weaker, you have problems with that, or if they just need more strengthening to keep it firmly in place as you raise your arm up, then things are going to get pinched. So it's a kind of a quickie little treatment for that. Here's another book too that I would recommend if you do want to go that route, if you want to just strengthen your rotator cuff. Like I say, strengthening your rotator cuff will give you great shoulder stability. It'll keep the ball in the socket, and so when you raise your arm, things won't get pinched. It's kind of a quick treatment for that, and it works. This book here, divided up into several parts too. Basically, or if you have a rotator cuff tear, this is a great resource. Goes over anatomy, you know, what the rotator cuff does. Part 2 is answers about the rotator cuff. If you ever had any problems or questions about your rotator cuff problem, what are the symptoms of a tear, any arm maneuvers that might indicate you have a tear, what imaging tests are used, where does it tear at, are there different kinds of tears? Just goes for lots of pictures. If you're a real visual learner, you'll like this book. I have a rotator cuff tear and I'm in a lot of pain. I need surgery, right? Well, not necessarily, because the problem is that according to the book, which is really evidence-based, each one of these is like a study. It puts it in layman's terms. So all the answers to these questions are all evidence-based, and he's got the studies to prove them. Basically, you can find people with large tears that don't have much pain, or actually no pain. You can have people, and then you can find people with small tears that are in a lot of pain. So because there's no real correlation between your tear size and pain, just because you're having a lot of pain doesn't necessarily mean you'll need surgery. What if I just leave my rotator cuff tear alone? Well, here again, you got to go through all the studies. The only way you know is, if you take people with rotator cuff tears and you look at the prospective studies where they follow them, for 5, 10, 15 years, and what happens? Do they repair themselves? Do they get bigger? Do they stay the same? This book has done that. I've gone through all the studies. How does exercise compare when it comes to surgery? When it comes to treating a rotator cuff? Well, here again, the only way you're going to know that is to look at the randomized controlled trials. That's the best type of study to prove that something works in medicine. So let's say you take 100 people, 50 you randomly assign to surgery, 50 you randomly assign to do exercise, and then you follow them for, like 6 months, 6 weeks, a year, 5 years, and, where do they end up? Going through all the studies, according to this book, studies are all quite consistent that whether you have surgery or do exercise, you're going to end up at the same place in the long run. So there you go. To that end, the book does end with an exercise program. Basically, it's 3 different levels. Some people have a tear, an acute tear. They can hardly move their arm. This will give you some real simple things to do. But some people have, a small tear or just a chronic tear, but they can still move their arm around fairly well. They just have, nagging pain. And they can start with the advanced or the intermediate program. So, like I say, rotator cuff, strengthen that alone, I think, will help impingement syndrome. Looking at a 3-step program, also pretty comprehensive. I'd check it out. So there you go.